Miss Gebhard's husband, Garrett Gebhard, has an admission of having sexual contact with a 14-year-old girl who told him that she was 16 when he was 19. Also, the exchange with an online girlfriend in 2007, when Mr. Gebhard pled to a charge of attempted unlawful imprisonment when charged with inappropriate touching of unlawful imprisonment. It was based upon this admission that the court is requesting that he complete a parenting evaluation with the psychological and mental health component prior to unsupervised visits with children, which you were trying to organize. The president of Gays Against Groomers Kansas City chapter is a straight woman who's married to a groomer. Yeah.
Nearly 30% of Gen Z adults identify as LGBTQ.
Good for them.
And so clearly it's not 0.1%. Now, okay, trans, yes. If you're talking about specifically trans, I can pull the number up, but I'm willing to bet it's much higher than you think it is.
Pull it up. Pull it up. Let's see what the number of trans is, because it's taking up so much of our political discourse and our time. And on something so important like education and schools, it should not suck the oxygen out of the room. Our real problem with education is data, science, research, teaching, resources. Those are the things that matter.
I also think parents see schooling as an extension of parenting in some way,
2%.
where the schools...
2%?
2% of Gen Z identify as trans, specifically.
A point higher than...
Not related to that moment in the sentence that they were speaking about. I do love that, though, the jump in out of nowhere, right? 2%. 2%. Thing I'm talking about now. 2%. My topic. 2. 1,
double that of
2.
millennials, and it's double that of millennials, and 1 second, and so 0.3 of Gen X, 0.2 of Boomers, and 2% of Gen Z.
So why are we talking about it?
We're talking about LGBTQ as a
I mean,
the
reason this all got brought up was
right,
because...
like the guy...
But trans we're talking about a lot. It's not just the LGBTQ.
But that's because that's the permanence, right?
So
it's like if a kid is being given a book about using Grindr or whatever, like we have a problem with that for obvious reasons. But showing a kid graphic things that they shouldn't is bad and can have psychological traumatic effects. Giving a kid surgery...
Certainly hope that you have age blockers on your channel then, Tim. I hope no children can have access to this in any way, shape, or form. It could permanently change them forever. When you say permanence, like, and you're talking about trans people, I know what you're implying, because everyone knows what the transphobic bigots think about this at this point, but, like, people are born how they're born. Yeah. So that's not really what you're talking about, is it?
For puberty blockers is debilitating. So we care about, it's the argument Black Lives Matter use. We spray the fire hose on the burning building and not the one next to it. So if we've got, that's the argument Black Lives Matter used. They said, yes,
you're not understanding it though, are you, Tim? Because in this case, there's students who are being unfairly targeted by bigots who are trying to take away their health care and marginalize them simply because of how they were born. That's you. That's y'all, right? So you're doing that. So you're the fire. You're the fire burning the house down. And so, yeah, it would be nice if people thought that way about all people. If they thought the same way they thought about cis people as they do about trans people, that would be nice. And then to complete your metaphor here, that's how the whole thing would work.
Everybody has problems and all lives do matter, but this one's on fire. So if we have 30% of Gen Z identifying as LGBTQ, we should ask ourselves why that is. Is it a social...
Right. So that only works if you think that being queer is a problem, right? So that's why you see it as the fire. Whereas other people who just want to exist, they see you trying to get rid of them as the fire. That's the difference. If you see, right, a group of people that are increasing in numbers, you're like 30% of LGBTQ plus, Gen Z identifies as such. Okay, so we got to look into why that is, because why is that happening? Why is there so many people identifying that way? That's the problem, right? And so that's why we got to put it out.
Contagion, or is it that throughout history, for all of time, all humans have been 30% LGBTQ, but we just never knew because it wasn't socially acceptable? I'm sure there's a certain number of this which is true, that LGBT people hid, but I don't believe it's 30%.
So wait, just so I'm clear, you think
So he thinks there's a percentage in the middle somewhere in the gooey center, somewhere in there. There's a percentage of people who obviously had to hide it because bigots or something. But then there's people who are part of a social contagion, the woke mind virus, who are being convinced against their will to want to do things either sexually or change their gender. But they have no control. It's just the social media, the credit scores, all that kind of stuff. Like genuinely, I just really, Tim, I say this to dudes who are 100% straight. Is there, some kind of exchange that in your mind works in terms of getting social credit, likes, where you would now want to suck a bunch of men's dicks? Like that, is there a ratio? Like how much you get, like not ratioed, or likes, or shares, or thumbs up, where all of a sudden you're like, you know what? Okay, fine. Now the idea of sucking a man's penis is suddenly becoming appealing to me. Well, yeah, because how else am I going to get that gram? How else? It's just, the woke mind virus. Everyone's doing it.
Some percentage of that 30% of kids or young people
I think
are
it's-
not really gay, but they caught something that makes them want to have sex with the same. They caught something that makes
No.
them want to have sex with the same sex, like of people.
No, I'm saying that there are kids
Okay.
who, first of all, half of the Gen Z say they're bi. And now you've got, if you actually like,
Half of Gen Z say they're bi. That's wild. Absolutely wild. You know what else is wild? The first time we started studying this stuff, say there was a doctor, like a Kinsey, who invents a scale, and he wants to look at this and interview people, because we don't often get to talk about this. But what if people, if they didn't have to worry whatsoever about, being exposed for certain inclinations or desires or activities they've wanted to participate or have participated in, once you start to interview men, straight men, lots of straight men, and you start asking them that, how many of them have ever had a gay thought, or not even super gay, just like, everybody's got like a heterosexual crush, right? How many women have been like, wow, that woman is also very beautiful? Not that I want to go eat her out or something like that, but I can appreciate the female form. She's very, very fetching. And, if we were dancing together, I wouldn't mind that. I mean, if you're playing sports with the guys, a little slap on the ass, it's not necessarily sexual, just some camaraderie. And then you shower afterwards, and you don't have to help each other out. I mean, you could, but I just mean it's not necessarily gay or sexual, but you're just exploring. Well, when you look at that, and the Kinsey scale turned out like a very high percentage of men had actually not only had homosexual thoughts before, but also had little hand jobs, doing the old handies, either jerking themselves off or jerking men off as well. And then a lot of people were like, wait, what the fuck? So wait, does that mean that the world is super gay? No, it means a lot of things. It means that there's experimentation. It means that there's different ideas of what exactly is human sexuality, that it's actually not just a yes or no, that it's not just suddenly like most people, all people are either one of the two thing, right? They're either going to be the gay or the straight. That's it. It's like, no. There's lots of possible combinations. There's people who, for the most part, are mostly heterosexual, almost entirely heterosexual, but for some reason, they enjoy watching sometimes gay people have sex. They don't know why, and it scares them, and they think it makes them gay, but they actually wouldn't participate in the gay act itself, and so they're just confused about why that is. And if there was, again, only one of two options, you might be like, so I guess I have to be the gay, right? I don't have a choice. It's like, actually, no. And it's, totally normal if you're not even attracted to sex, sexuality, or people at all. That's also normal. That appears within the actual, again, spectrum of human sexuality. There's a lot of different variations. You could be aromantic, which means that you're not going to want to have romantic relationships with people of any gender. So you're aromantic in that respect, and there's variations of what that is. But you could still be interested in sex. I know, it's wild. Or you could just be interested in sex and have no interest in romance, or not interested in both. Like there's, again, so many different variations you could potentially have. So it's interesting, way more fascinating than we ever thought possible. But if you just see the world again in a really rigid binary, then everything else kind of stops making sense. The only way to explain it is either woke mind viruses or the fact that some people are just faking it. Like everyone reporting that they're bi, they're just saying that to be cool. I mean, when push comes to shove, would they really touch another man's dick? Would they enjoy it? I don't think so. I think they're just saying it to be cool. Again, the coolness that comes from the pretty well-documented persecution of you as a person if you happen to be LGBTQ+. I know certain, polls are showing that people now who are younger are more comfortable than ever expressing or admitting or even talking about the fact that they, may have same-sex attractions, or they may not be the gender they were assigned at birth or things like that. But it doesn't mean that the atmosphere overall is great. I mean, there are still studies that come out recently that show that you have a lower chance of getting, say, a job if you use they them pronouns in your application. That's pretty much just direct discrimination there. Examples of discrimination. And the Matt Walshes of the world just say good. Like you'll get like, here's data that shows that people discriminate against you if you happen to be non-binary. It's like, good. Yeah, maybe you should stop, all of you.
Read the blogs and read what they're saying.
Yeah.
They say things like, Lance, for instance. Did you know that Lance is LGBT?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, he claims to be too. And everyone's kind of like, bro, you're just some white dude. This is not true. They're just saying these things.
That was so racist. He's just a white.
Wait, are they talking about me? Are my ears burning? Is this a joke?
Dude?
Yeah. He's just some like stodgy
That's
white
racist against white guys. Tim, that's terrible.
What did I say
That's
bad about
terrible.
white guys? That
You
they're
just
not
said
gay?
he's just a white guy. He's much more than.
I was like, whoa, okay, well, I don't know if this is the same Lance. I hope it's the same Lance, because if there's multiple Lances who are also being talked about in this regard, let's sure. Are they? I think they're trying to do the whole joke, though. You know, it's like, hey, by the way, if someone who's straight can pretend to be bi, then someone who's white can pretend to be multiracial, because it's the same thing, right? Yeah, he's just a white guy. That'll be my slogan. It's gonna be like 2024, Lance. He's just a white guy. You can trust me. Don't worry. I'll use my privilege for good.
But that's not racist. That's not racist against white people.
I'm giving you a hard time, man.
Aren't you gay? Well, I technically am, but a smaller percentage of, you know, like if there was a scale, say a Kinsey scale, I'm like a 1.75, I would say, out of 6, which more straight than gay. More often than not, way more attracted to women. On average, yeah. But I guess Tim, if they are talking about me, it goes down to like, but you don't present as gay. You know, like I've heard that before, people being like, you're not queer coded, you know, because I guess Tim expects people just to be running around, you know, just being all like super flamboyant with it or stuff like that. The way to figure out whether or not someone is gay or straight or bi or pan is if they tell you. That's probably the best way to know, because then you don't have to do all the guessing. You don't have to do that thing where it's like, hey, bro, you're with a trans woman who's got a penis, so you're gay, bro. Yeah, you're just gay. You're gay. That's why you're doing it, bro. Yeah, trust me. I'm saying that. It's just, hey, it's no fault of yours, but you're gay, bro. Person could be bi. Person could be pan. Person could be a lot of things. Person could be 100% straight. You know, that's basically on them to tell you. That would be the best way to figure that out. Yeah, that whole thing.
Listen, I don't know Lance at all, so I can't.
So
speak to him,
if we find that,
huh?
I don't know who Lance is.
He was on the show. I think it was
he's a leftist guy.
It was one of my favorite shows.
It is me. Oh my god. Okay, wild. So yes. M the bias. That's true. But again, mostly straight. Mostly. Yeah, and that's okay. It's okay. It's again, it's not something you got to prove to the Tim Pools of the world. I don't need to have a suckathon just to be able to demonstrate my skills before Tim. But if it's about the white shit, no, I'm white as fuck. Yeah, obviously, I'm very open about that. What I'm not ashamed of is being Métis, right? Because my mom's indigenous, but I'm not ashamed of that. But in terms of whiteness, that's probably a lesson to most people who haven't figured that out. I get the same experience. Like I have the white privilege. I get to talk to cops. I get to talk my way out of getting arrested. I've done it multiple times. I'm self-aware of what that privilege can be like. Because I never in my head was thinking, well, at any given time, if I say the wrong thing, this dude's gonna beat the fuck out of me and then taser my unconscious body until I wake up in a cell having shit myself. I never had to think that. I was basically like, no, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms prevents you from being able to give me unwanted searches and seizures. Haha, yeah. Well, I'm scared of you.
Actually, like you have these people on, and you're actually really open to having these discussions. So it was a really.
Oh, they will not come on the show.
Really?
Well, they can't defend their ideas.
For the most part.
You have a lot of them on,
sometimes.
Tim, you only allow people to come onto your compound. Again, it's utterly bizarre to like. I'd be fine if all he said was like, hey, by the way, I invite people, but they never want to come. But to suggest that it's like no one wants to speak to me because they can't defend their ideas, and it's like people ask you on a daily basis. Like I would have come on Tim Pool's show the day of his challenge, but it's like no, you got to fly out. You got to fly out all the way to the other side of the continent for me. That's like for a lot of people, yeah, that's just it's not feasible. It's not what they would like. If you want to speak to anyone, Sam Cedar, any given day, he'll go on like literally. I'm sure today, right now. now as I'm saying this, even if Tim is not broadcasting, if I DM Sam Cedar and I was like, hey, Tim Pool wants to speak to you, he would make it happen. He was like, yes, okay, fine, yeah, sure, we'll set it up. I'll get on Skype on my cell phone in the car in a parking lot as I was doing other things now, but I will speak to you. Yes.
You have some of those people on. I've seen some good shows.
Yeah, you ask 1,000 people and one person.
Yeah,
comes.
exactly.
Really?
You've got everyone on the right banging on the door, begging to be let in,
Yeah.
and the left is saying, hell no.
Yeah.
And
well, I will always be your left guy. Just,
So-
I'm not totally aware who that is, but Emma Vigeland, again, it went on to pretty much embarrass them. Matt Binder as well, the same thing. That was after, several other people have done it too. It's like there are people who are willing to take you up on the, yes, sure, I'll take 4 to 5 days out of my week to fly all the way over to the Tim Pool compound, get there, get chauffeured into the compound, do your show, and get chauffeured out. And yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of, surprise, right-wingers who are like, well, yeah, it's the biggest right-wing live streaming show. I want to go on it. I would like to, please.
Blue-pilled guy. But keep saying what you were saying, though.
So the point here is, certainly, I don't think it's reasonable to assume that in one generation we found 30% of humans are LGBT and have just decided to engage in behaviors we've not seen before or something like this. Humans would not be reproducing if a third of the population growth would be substantially smaller if a third of humans.
You just said that the majority of Gen Z identifies as bi. Bi people they can still have the straight sex. It's the whole part of it.
We're not interested in having families and having kids. Now, to be fair, half of them say they're bi, which opens the door for reproduction. So then let's look at the other.
Okay, so one of the findings of the Kinsey scale and of the study that was done, and this was a while ago, right? I want to say that it was done in the 60s. No, it was done in the 40s. Never mind. Whew, this was way ahead of its time in terms of, a lot of this kind of research being done. The report also states that nearly 46% of male subjects had reacted sexually to persons of both sexes in the course of their adult lives. 37% had at least one homosexual experience. These are old, stats, Tim. 37% had at least one homosexual experience. We're talking about nearly half of men when all of a sudden there wasn't pressure because this was an anonymous, the names were not directly associated with the people being interviewed, were willing to admit that, well, yeah, okay, so nearly half of all men have reacted sexually to someone who's also a man at some point. And reacted as in oh, okay. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to walk up to that dude and be like, hey, can I fall into your balls? They're actually quite fetching. But definitely just been like, oh. And then maybe it's in that moment, and because being a guy, especially in patriarchal society, so much of it is about being as fucking straight as possible, as manly as possible, and manliness is only as straight as you are, that maybe that makes you deeply insecure, that fucks with your mind a bit, where you're just you can't even be comfortable enough to be like, no, I understand why women find that man attractive. No, you can't do that, that's gay. But then once you pull it up to 37% had at least one homosexual experience, and that can be broadly defined as, you kissed a guy, you guys just jerked off together, you in a hot tub, and one person was just like, hey, I'm just going to see what happens if I start doing this. And you're like, I'm going to find out as well. Doesn't matter what it was, but that's also a lot. But it's also okay. It's not like, hey, by the way, we're finding out that more people than ever before happen to be this. Okay. All right. I'm a sexual person. If I found out more people than I knew before were asexual, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, no, they'll outnumber us.
Half who are not bi, in which means that's the implication of homosexual behaviors and things like this. They're not going to be reproducing. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that. 15% of a generation saying that they're going to be engaging in these other these atypical behaviors. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not saying no to them. I'm saying we should ask ourselves why this is happening.
In my lifetime, and I'm older than everybody here, in my lifetime, I watched it go from you could be canceled from everything for being gay, from everything. Your job could drop you. Insurance companies could drop you. There was all kinds of things that being gay, it was just something you stayed in the closet about. You didn't tell people about it. This generation, Gen Z, I think is actually the most kind of destigmatized.
It's funny that you held up that left-handed chart to Tim's face to explain this concept, Tim. I think that's where he gets the, like, he didn't go all the way with it, where he was just like, some percentage of it was probably because of like stigma, sure, right? There's that. So I'll give you that. So that's as far as he's willing to go. But that's, I guess, 12% is where that maxes out. It's got to be the exact same as left-handedness. But so for this, when it's like it goes all the way up to 30%, that's why a lot of people now are kind of like, oh, what the fuck? And honestly, yeah, I've hid from most people a lot of my life being bi because it's easier. It's because it's literally the exact opposite of everything he just said. It's not that it's like, hey, you would be more popular in school. Hey, you would be more popular in society. Hey, you would be accepted by more people. Hey, more people would treat you normal. No, it's been literally the exact opposite of that across the board. Even if you're as blessed as I could be to have like amazing friends or family or even a partner, all that kind of stuff, who are more open-minded or progressive or that kind of stuff, just across the board, everyone is just like, oh shit, okay, so this is different than the norm. So I gotta treat you a little, well, no, I don't have to treat you different. That would be weird. Well, can I still make all the gay jokes though now that I've figured that out? Yeah, you can. No, you don't have to change who you are at all. It's fine. It's like, enjoy yourselves kind of thing.
Generation on a lot of things, not just this. And also I want you to talk to the number of people, period, that are just not interested in having families and babies anymore. Not just, LGBTQ. It's pretty high, the number of people that are not having babies anymore and having families.
So, but the important distinction here is, I think this story itself lends itself to my point that it is social contagion and not a legitimate awakening or acceptance.
And do you think the schools have something to do with that?
Yes, and media in general. So not only is Gen Z the most LGBTQ, they're actually experiencing the greatest decline in support for same-sex marriage. Now, certainly the people who are LGBT are not the same people who are saying they don't support same-sex marriage. It's hyperpolarization.
Like, again, I always hear this where it's just like there's a massive opposition to same. Like, no, there's not queers trying to take marriage away from the straights. I mean, I know every single time you hear about like the oppression group order, you think that like, well, the only thing that makes sense is if we inversed it, right? Like, so indigenous people, they should want revenge, shouldn't they? They should be thinking about that every day. Black people should want to enslave white people in America. They should be thinking about that all the time, or at least do a Tulsa or something, right? Just to like, even the score, because that's the only way I can really wrap my head around this concept. This whole kind of like, I look at everything from the whole like, oppression, oppressor. If you're not doing colonization, you will be colonized. That's why you've got that PragerU video that just came out. Like, would you rather have been colonized by Christians or Aztecs? Come on, when it comes down to it, pretty nice that you got NyQuil at the end of the day. That was a pretty good deal. Right?
And it is dominantly among males and females. Females are substantially more likely to identify as trans and non-binary. Males are substantially more likely to oppose same-sex marriage. Why these things are happening? Social indoctrination,
Yeah, of course, because you're talking about social constructs, which would make sense. Why would someone want to inherently just oppose the idea of two people being in unison or in love unless it was against the Bible?
Contagions.
And I think this is what parents are upset about with the schools. They see the schools as a way to transition their kids at a very young age when they don't understand these concepts at a very young age. So I see the problem as us being forced into a one-size-fits-all system where this culture war, name of the show, will never stop if we force people into this one-size-fits-all system of people who just disagree about how they want to raise their kids. And I think you and I have agreed for a long time, and I think I've heard you recently agree that something that you don't like is that people getting into other people's business, that you should just mind your own business.
I wish
America
would be so much better if everybody would mind their damn business.
And I think
the country would be so great.
That's the beauty of choice, though. That's the beauty of choice. You can send your kid to a school that is aligned with how you want to raise your kid. I can send my kid to a school that aligns with the way I would want to raise my kid, or I could homeschool, or you could homeschool, and then we'd be able to.
And so if it turned out that your kid became friends with someone who was gay, who was not interested in having a relationship, just a friend, would that be okay? Or would that friend that your kid then befriended, are they trying to indoctrinate them? Are they trying to insidiously teach them about the gay and give them the gay and then pass the gay on to your children, right? And I mean, that is how it works.
To choose, instead of saying, nope, you guys all live here, you got to go to this school, and then whoever runs that school, they get veto power over all the parents and what they want. So like I brought up, like, what if you're in an area where it's a hyper Trump supporting school and they taught you that Trump was the divine right of king, and if you're on the left, no one
would call it indoctrination if it happened on the right, though. They only call
it indoctrination. The left would call it indoctrination,
but it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter.
Well, the left would see that as
most of America is doing what you just said.
Okay, yeah, let's just be clear about this, okay? So there are ways in which people are born. Say they might have sexuality. They could be attracted to people of opposite genders. They could be attracted to no one at all. They could be attracted to people of the same gender, or they could be attracted to all of the above kind of stuff, right? And then we invent language and ways to explain that in society. And so then we will come up with terms: homosexual, heterosexual, pansexual, bisexual, asexual, all that kind of stuff, in order to try and better describe and communicate with one another our own internal feelings, experiences, sensations, which again are harder to quantify, say, than simply counting the amount of rocks that you have in front of you at any given time, stuff like that. So that language is then useful to be able to explain this thing. The more language we have, sometimes the more there will be representation of people who identify with that language, because all of a sudden they are getting the tool set that they never had before to be able to talk about that and describe it. But that's very, very different than, say, hey, if we have socially constructed organizations such as the idea of marriage, which is a bond that is going to be respected and recognized by, say, the government, things like that, then yes, these are still social constructs of which it is important to learn the language surrounding them to be able to communicate with one another. But that's not the same thing as inversing the whole way that bigotry works. You can't do that. You can't flip it on its head and be like, well, I mean, is that not its own social contagion? Is the left going to deny this? Or are they going to say, because they're always like, Tim Pool's always looking for the 180, this weird kind of like, but I got you. What if I was to do the whole sleight of hand and flip the whole thing around? And it's like, but one of those, you're born that way, you're not born MAGA. This is not the same thing. You can't be like, oh, you're discriminating against people based on the hats they wear. It's like, well, the hat you can take off though, right? It's just like people, different skin tones, can't just take the skin off. That's kind of the point.
Like, I live in red America, so most of America is doing what you just said.
They're not saying Trump is the divine king.
They're getting goddamn close.
There is, however, on
They're getting goddamn close. Right?
Hold on. Have you seen the Fox News commercial where it's like, teach your kids about why Trump is great? Have you seen this commercial?
Yeah, so anyways, I wasn't even watching this because of this. I didn't know that I was about to be invoked and spoken about. But I do kind of all the people on his show over the panel, at least this individual, I'm not totally familiar with them, is making the most sense. But we'll get into that in a second. I didn't want to talk about that because I had seen Tim Pool appear a couple times with Gays Against Groomers, talk about Gays Against Groomers, and I don't know if you all heard about the news. And Glinner's very upset about this, Graham Linehan. There's a woman who's the president of the Kansas chapter of Gays Against Groomers, and she's apparently being targeted by a bunch of these radical trans activists and gender ideologues who are trying to get her fired from her job. So let's read her statement and what they're trying to help. Because apparently a lot of people think that they're a hate organization and that they're actually anti-LGBTQ+, but they say that they're actually standing up for LGBTQ+ people. So this is a letter from her directly. To those on Health and Human Services Committee and others, my name is Elaine. I am the Kansas chapter leader of Gays Against Groomers. We are an organization of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and trans adults that oppose all the indoctrinating, sexualizing, and medicalizing of children under our community's name. While we understand that the organization's name may seem offensive to phrase to some, our accumulation of peer-reviewed, internationally replicated research has supported the medical procedures. Has supported that doing the medical procedures that this legislation is in favor of preventing is harmful to children, which is why our organization is supporting House Bill 2791. Children are irreversibly affected by medication that interferes with the natural indoctrination of puberty in so many ways, whether it's their bone growth, fertility, and the effect it has on anthropifying primary sex organs of these children. We have medical studies that prove the harm is being done. While we falsely hear that it's just the children who are not receiving surgery to their healthy organs. Again, sounds deeply fucked up, but while we falsely hear repeatedly that children are not receiving surgery to cut off their healthy organs, it is shocking how many people think it is hate to have legislation that stops it. We ask, if it is supposedly not happening, what is the harm to prevent their children from having these surgeries? Because you're bundling everything in, by the way. Like, if you're like, hey, if there's no such thing as bottom surgery for kids, then why is it bad if we ban bottom surgery for kids? And it's like you're trying to ban all gender affirming care, and then saying that this is because we want to ban, bottom surgery for children, but you're just trying to get rid of basically healthcare for a group of people that have been historically marginalized. So there's that. Here we go again. This is about gag. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna derail this quite at the moment just yet. So if you didn't know this, over the weekend, it was exposed that the leader, the president, R.N. Gebhardt, says doesn't say that my husband is a pedo, and then researchers found out Miss Gebhardt's husband, Gerrit Gebhard, has an admission of having sexual contact with a 14-year-old girl when who told him that she was 16 when he was 19. Also, the exchange with an online girlfriend in 2007, when Mr. Gebhardt pled to a charge of attempted unlawful imprisonment when charged with inappropriate touching of unlawful imprisonment. It was based upon this admission that the court is requesting that he complete a parenting evaluation with the psychological and mental health component prior to unsupervised visits with children, which you were trying to organize. The president of Gays Against Groomers Kansas City chapter is a straight woman who's married to a groomer. Yeah. Who's married to and defends a groomer. And again, one of those things where it's like, you can't make this shit up. How many times does it have to happen? Where it's all these groups who target LGBTQ plus people over and over and over. They turn out to either be massive ass groomers themselves or be married to groomers or defend groomers. It's like, it's legitimately fucking sick. This woman was posting loads of bigoted things on her Twitter recently, dared someone to find her workplace. I think she said, oh yeah, then where do I work? Problem is she had her work in her bio on multiple social media accounts, so she was found very easily and reported has been investigated for online activity by the workplace. This is just the latest by Elaine Gerbhardt's saga. More stuff comes out about her every day. To my recollection, it's like this. Elaine claims as grooming and pedo culture to let a child under 16 to 18 be asked questions by a doctor without a parent present. Response to her tweet to point out that parents abuse children and doctors need to be able to ask questions without pressure for the kid's safety. Elaine's Twitter is combed over and consistent on attacks on the queer community are noted. Snarkily dares someone to tell her where she works. Workplace is immediately found. Multiple people report on it for online activity. It comes out that Elaine's own child has been the victim of grooming by a parent, and Twitter explodes with people coming for her, accusing doctors of doing the same thing for her ex-husband has done to their child. Court documents have been shared in this thread already. Elaine doubles down on everything. Trans people and doctors are the real groomers. It's wrong for kids to be able to speak to medical professionals, let alone queer people, and they're a danger to society. Everyone reporting her is a loser. Elaine tweets that something bad has happened to her and that the victim always pays for the actions of the abuser. It is assumed that she's been fired or placed on probation. It is revealed that Elaine is one of the local faction leaders of the Gays Against Groomers online movement and is associated with trans and queer issues with pedophilia. The irony is, of course, Elaine is, so far as we can tell, a heterosexual who knows that her child was assaulted by her cis father. Yet to her, it's the doctors of the trans community that are dangerous to groomers, and parents should be allowed to keep their kids away from the safeguarding. She's still tweeting, or trying to tweet through this. Glinner has taken to trying to defend her actions. Imagine getting online as a nurse, arguing incorrectly that asking kids questions away from their parents is abuse, tripling down on that with everybody and trying to deflect, only to call and have someone pull up the court case where your husband is accused of sexual assault. Yep. Gotta love nurses who don't agree with you ideologically advocating for people to report your license and then claim it's not doxing. Okay, I'll answer that. Your last name is uncommon. Kansas isn't in your bio. State nursing boards are public. I didn't post your license, nor did I post a link to the case where your husband is accused of sexual assault, but I'll put a screenshot here for context. Nothing I advocate for is against nursing ethics. You just want to be able to bully and silence me. You claim it's not doxing, but it literally is to change my livelihood. You're just mad because I disagree with you. The nursing board isn't going to investigate this. And you're acting like a toddler who didn't take away someone else's toy. Grow up. And so someone else posts it. Yes, the father of my child who preyed upon me at 17 when he was 21 tried to kidnap someone else's child. And you're still married? No, I'm not married to him. I was never married to him. Try again. Okay. And then this one was posted. Elaine Gebhardt, with the pedo wife, abandoned her own child for the pedophile for 2.5 years. Her current husband is Gerrit Gebhardt, who is a convicted sex offender, accused of molesting a 14-year-old. These are now public court records. Again, just like so fucked, so unbelievably fucked. And yeah, Glinner was going to defend this person. I don't know if I have them up here anymore. Oh yeah, here it is. Wait, why did you auto block Glinner? Gotta let Glinner and both of them have as much fun as possible. Dear Elon Musk, please contact Gebhardt, a nurse who has been targeted by the trans activist for her tweets and lost her job. She's in need of a legal fund. He didn't respond to us like posting actual evidence, by the way, like all the people who he considers like LGBTQ plus activists and shit like that, posting the actual records where it's just like, yeah, the 14-year-old, this is fucked up. Why is it the very people who consistently talk about how they want to defend the world from groomers and pedophiles are either themselves groomers or pedophiles, or helping or marrying or associating with groomers and pedophiles? It seems like a nonstop pattern.
Systems together. How can we share parks? How can we share education? How can
we're
we
gonna
do
talk about it in 1
democracy
sec.
without killing each other, right? You have countries where everybody looks like each other. That's not the United States. You have some countries where everybody's the same.
Well, it
and they
was
look
in the
like each other.
60s.
So, you think America was that way in the 60s?
It was 90-something% white people.
I don't think it was 90%. Well, and that's a good point too. Because one of the ways that we decided to make sure that the Italians, the Italians and the Irish and the Polish and the Jews and everybody could live together is one of the ways we got over that. It was we just made all of them white. So that's one way we got over it. But what I think
you're getting at though is that.
Oh, I wish you went into more detail just to explain that concept just a little bit further. It would have been a great history lesson. The de-whitification of the Italians.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We first want to give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. This program is produced thanks to the generous support of our Patreon supporters: Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbar Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bomey, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Travis McClinton, and Words Greenwood. As well as every other person you see on the screen right now, this show would not be possible without them. And if you want to join these wonderful people who make this entire program possible, simply go to patreon.com/the Serfs and you can unlock uncensored and bonus episodes and, help us exist.